Bienvenidos! Hey, my name is Jed Lee. This is Reading with Your Kids. We are beaming out to you and the entire universe from the beautiful, historical, book-loving neighborhood of Reedville, the loveliest neighborhood in all of Boston. You know, I like to say that Reading with Your Kids, it's more than just a podcast. It's a movement. Our mission is to help families grow stronger, closer, and kinder through the magic of reading together. And we are absolutely thrilled to have you with us on that journey. Help us spread the word by telling all of your family and friends about the show and let them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network. And they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, YouTube, Podcast Addict, Amazon Music, Audible. Wherever you find your favorite shows, you can find Reading with Your Kids. Hey, we have a really, really wonderful show for you today. First up, Andrew Hackett returns to Reading with Your Kids to celebrate his new picture book. It's called In This Classroom. And later in the show, New York Times bestselling author Susan Cain is here with her son Eli to celebrate Lucky and Norman saying goodbye is bittersweet. This episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by Fart Boy and Reeky Dog Dino Doom. Fantastic new graphic novel written by New York Times bestselling author Joan Holub, who's written over 200 amazing books for kids. It's school sleepover at the museum. What could go wrong? Well, how about this? A snack-fueled explosion of garbanzo beans and peanuts unleashes a stink so powerful it brings the dinosaurs back to life. Now, Fart Boy, Reeky Dog, and their friends are in the middle of a dino-sized disaster. They have to solve tricky riddles, find missing bones, and stop the stinkiest villain of all, Professor Gravy Pants. Because if they don't, the dinosaurs could take over. Or worse, they could become Dino Dinner. This action-packed graphic novel is bursting with friendships, adventure, and enough laughs to shake the museum walls. If your kids love superheroes, if they love dinosaurs, and if they love to laugh until they can't breathe, then Fart Boy and Reeky Dog Dino Doom is the book for you. Because sometimes the power to save the world comes from the unlikeliest place. Grab your copy today and get ready for a reading adventure that's truly dynamite. Joining us from not too far from our Reedville studios, our guest is returning to Reading with Your Kids to celebrate his new picture book. It's called In This Classroom. Please welcome back to the show, author, teacher, and pretty good guy, Andrew Hackett. Hey, Andrew, what's going on, buddy?
So good to be back. Thanks for having me.
I'm delighted to have you back. Boy, you've been on a tear. I met you at an author thing about a year or so ago, and you had 3 books come out in your first year, and now this is book number 4, and you're telling me you have a bunch under contract. And you're a teacher. Where do you get the time, dude?
Oh, my goodness. You make the time, I guess. I beg, borrow, and steal. It, in the beginning, was early mornings. It was on the sideline of the soccer field. It was... when my kids were younger and, you had to stay with them at practices, I would print manuscripts and revise on the sideline, and just any moment I could put towards my writing, I did. Thankfully, at this point, I've got a little bit of a backlog of unsold manuscripts, so I can pump the brakes a little bit during the school year. But as we head into summer, my creative gears are just spinning with how much can I create in these 2 months before going back to the day job.
Yeah. So I'm curious. You and I were joking before we hit. Both of us were very moved by the fact that Jane Yolen passed not too long ago, and we're both super impressed by the incredible legacy that she's created. 453 books and counting. More to come. What do you do in terms of, you have these 2 months? I'm guessing you're not looking to create and finish a product or a project in these 2 months? Is it more like just banking ideas? Let's get some ideas together so we can work on them in the fall and winter?
A combination. I think because I'm so busy during the school year, teaching and, being with my own children and family, when ideas creep up then, those go into that like placeholder notebook or scrap of paper or my notes app, whatever's handy. And then when I get to February break, April break, summer is that time that those ideas have been percolating for a while. They've been spinning around in the back of my head, my fall asleep thoughts, my waking up thoughts, that I do try and like get out as many drafts. They might be terrible, but get as much new writing done during the summer. Drafting's much harder for me. Putting new words to a page, I find the hardest part of publishing for me.
Really?
I would much rather revise. Revision for me is a puzzle. I know where I want to get the book. I'm stubborn. So figuring out that thing. And I can do those revisions in much smaller bits of time. Whereas that drafting process and the freeing myself up mentally and creatively to just let those words fly, I get in my own way. I'm one of those constant, like, type 4 words, delete 3 of them, change 1. So yeah, the summer is my time to just knock out as much new work as possible and then refine that in those little bits of time I can steal when life's busy again.
All right. Yeah, that's an awful lot, boy. I'm telling you, it really is. Like a lot of people say, you can't wait. You can't wait until the story just comes to you. Because I hear a lot of people who want to be creative. It's like, the muse hasn't hit me yet. I have to wait. It's like, the muse doesn't really come around unless she sees you working, and then she'll drop in. So you gotta put the work in every day.
Absolutely. And I think a big part of it for me too is being around creative people. Even going to friends' book events and to conferences. Even if I'm not working on something, when I come back, those creative energies just from being with people in that same mindset, kind of just helps the writing take off and the motivation sustain. So I'm a big fan of, even if I'm not actively writing, being within that kid-lit space as much as possible, just feeds the idea generation and that desire to keep creating.
Yeah. One of the things that occurred to me as I'm speaking to you now is there is a real chunk of the kidlit world live here in Massachusetts. Some amazing authors, and they've all been on the podcast, and not just because they're neighbors. It's usually I find out that they're neighbors when they come on.
Yeah, we are so fortunate. That has been a big part of my learning. I know when I was a pre-published author, I started going to events at the Silver Unicorn to see Jarrett Lerner and Josh Funk, and I didn't know who these people were at the time, but it was, I want to be doing what you guys are doing. How do I learn from you? What does a bookstore visit look like? What do you say? What do you do? And just trying to absorb as much as they had to offer. And as I'm sure many of your guests have told you, the kidlit world is such a generous space that as a complete stranger to them and all these other wonderful people in the state that I've met through publishing, they're always offering advice and tips and just wanting to help whoever wants a piece of this to be successful and find their way.
Yeah. I know that's one of the reasons we've been chugging along for 8 years, is that kidlit world is so supportive. I know starting out back in 2017, it was going on social media and begging people that were self-publishing books, hey, can you please? And then the word spread, and I've done a few podcasts, and this is the only community where we've experienced that. and
Mm-hmm.
it's really genuine, and it's a wonderful thing, and it makes sense because we're all adults making great stuff for kids and families.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, there's none of the ego or competitive feel.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's if a publisher chooses my friend's book over my book, it's because their book was what they needed. It's not because one's better or worse than the other. It's about filling a need, you know, within their business. So we all just write, you know, from the heart and what feels true to us. And eventually we land with the right editor and gets it into the hands of kids, which is all we're really trying to do, right? Is just create good books for kids to love and laugh with. I feel really fortunate that I get to play even a small part in that.
Yeah. And that's a really important lesson for kids to learn, especially kids going into the arts. My daughter was big in, loved musical theater when she was a kid. But she was very wise in that she knew that there was, hey, I might think of myself as a great dancer, a great singer, I have a better voice, but for this part, they're looking for somebody that's taller than me, different than me, shorter than me, whatever. You know, I'm me, and I can't change that, and they're looking for something different.
Totally. Absolutely. My daughter does musical theater also, and it's that same thing of, it's also like being a team, right? That it takes every person to play their part, and that part may not be the biggest one, but each person is equally important to the success of that production.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about in this classroom, coming from a teacher, somebody who's on the front lines. Is this a documentary kind of?
A little bit. I view my publisher, as we were getting ready to kind of go out with it, was like, "Are you okay with me calling it your manifesto?" And I was like, I need to make sure I understand that word correctly first. But it's so true. It is the story of my heart. I've been teaching for 18 years, in second grade, all 18 years. And in this classroom is a celebration of the school year, including the ups, the downs, and really the magic that is classroom community. That every year we get this new crew of students with a new teacher. It's never the same mix. It's never the same dynamic. But what holds true every year is that magic of community that can be formed because of our differences, because of what each one of us brings individually to the classroom, which makes us a better whole. So it is really what I strive to provide my students when we're generating a new classroom culture. It's what I hope when teachers read it, they recognize and they feel that connection also, and maybe are inspired to go even further to develop that community. You know, yes, our job is to educate students, but a big part of that education is how to be a kind person and how to be a part of that community. And I think this book really elevates and helps, can help teachers develop that within their classrooms.
Well, Andrew, you know, I know that your principal, your school committee, DESE up at the state level may disagree with me, but I personally think that teaching those lessons of community and empathy and partnership, they're way more important than everything else. I've had leaders, captains of industry on the show, and they've come out and said, Jed, I can teach anybody I find on the street to do a job in my corporation. I don't need them to be trained. I can teach them to do anything I need, but I can't teach them how to get along. I can't teach them to be a team player.
It's so true. And I think we've seen that within education as the focus over the last couple of decades has really shifted to academics at a much younger age. We're not giving those kindergartners what they need in terms of learning through play and having that time together. And I've definitely over the years felt and seen the effects of that.
Yeah.
It's been having to work harder to provide opportunities for the students to get what they should be getting. And I would say most teachers know it too, but we're in a system that we're not the leaders of. So we find the ways to get it in there.
There you go. There you go. Well, that's, one of the things, there's so much I want to dive into. My beautiful wife taught for over 34 years in the Boston public school system, and it was very, the kids were challenging, the families were challenging, but the thing that was most challenging was people who had no idea what was going on in her individual classroom, making rules, passing edicts that handcuffed her. Literally, this is, people can't believe this when I tell it. She taught, like I said, special needs kids, lots of kids from the Caribbean. She had this one kid who was 11 years old, had never been to school a day in his life, did not know how to count. And that she was told she had to teach him long division because that's how old he was. And she would argue, like, but he doesn't count. What do you mean? And it was like, and the powers that be said, hey, that's the rules. You got to do it.
Yep. Very familiar with those types of situations, unfortunately. Yeah, and it just makes me think, and it is what most teachers, I think, hold true, is there's this piece of knowing each student individually and knowing what they need. And in most instances, it is not a uniform need across the classroom. They are all individuals, and they come from all sorts of backgrounds that, while it is really challenging to teach each one exactly what they need all at the same time, like, we're one person, we have our limits and capacity. The idea of teaching everyone the same thing the same way just makes no sense.
Yeah.
If you're trying to celebrate individuality and those specific differences that make each of us unique.
Yeah. You're talking about classrooms as a community. I was very, very involved in my kids' education, especially there in the elementary education, helping out wherever I could. And it was wonderful. It was wonderful for me. It was wonderful for my kids. The school really appreciated it. There was, and what you were saying about every class having its kind of own group personality was very true. My daughter was fortunate to be part of this amazing group of kids that were together for 5 years, and they were the sweetest kids and most supportive, and it was just beautiful. And it was one of these situations where other teachers would notice it. My kids, my daughter was in 5th grade, and the 6th and the 7th grade teachers would talk to me. They go, "That's a great class. There's kids are so cool." So is there a way? I think in her case, it was just all the pieces fit together perfectly. What other kind of things can you do as a teacher, and what other kind of things can a parent do to support a teacher that can help build that type of community?
I think as a teacher, it's slowing down a little bit, especially in the beginning, to allow the students to recognize what their strengths are, to allow students to shine individually. I think that's one of the best ways to combat the idea of differences being anything other than a positive. If we can find those differences within our students and shine a positive light on them and help that kid stand out in a way of just being a role model, showing something unique or special about them that we can celebrate together, that helps the whole class bond. That helps us celebrate those things that are different or that may be unfamiliar. I work in a really diverse school at the moment, and there are aspects of students' culture that, one student to the next, they may not understand what home life looks like for that kid, what their belief system looks like. And by just being respectful of it and acknowledging it, the kids are all right. The kids are open-minded. They are willing to accept It's when we as adults very often try to downplay it or ignore it, that we send this silent message that there's something wrong with it. I had in my classroom this year, a religious holiday was coming up for one of my students in their culture, and they were telling us about it. And another student was like, I don't understand. Like, what is that? And I just sat back and listened as they had the most respectful conversation with lots of students chiming in about, well, is that like a church? Is it like a temple? Do you have someone that you believe in? And others are like, my family doesn't have those beliefs. And it was just the most civil, the most understanding and accepting conversation between 8 and 9-year-olds who all have different skin colors, speak different languages at home. And their response was, okay, thanks for letting me know about it. It didn't need to be anything bigger than that. Yeah. So circling back to your question, I think really it's letting them shine, letting them be individuals. And from an at-home perspective is, I like to have support from families, especially when it's about topics I'm not familiar with. I don't want to, in my ignorance, teach something wrong or try to sound like an expert on something that I by no means am, and that child or that family is living it and so much more knowledgeable. I would rather, invite them in. And I know we're talking like beliefs, but it could be anything. It could be a special talent or interest or a career path that one of the grown-ups in the family has followed. I think anytime we can just shine a light on how amazing differences are, through the families or through the classroom, kids are inspired to be even more uniquely themselves.
Yeah.
Because you're not celebrating the best soccer player or the best this or that. You're celebrating the child. And so then they all want to be celebrated for who they are, which is arguably exactly what we should be doing.
Amen. I wish you had caught that conversation about beliefs on tape, because I think every college student and beyond could use that.
Me too. And I mean, I will fully admit, I was sitting there like at the front of the classroom sweating a little bit of like, where's this going to go? And as they so often do, the kids rise to the occasion and just show us they are so bright. They are so accepting and intuitive. And it takes very little from the grown-up or teacher perspective to light a spark within them to just grow it even more.
Yeah. Boy, as a second grade teacher for 18 years, I certainly hope you get promoted at some point in the future.
It's kind of my happy place. I always tell the kids at the end of the year, they're like, can you come with me? I'm like, you guys are too smart for me. Like, this is, I am a second grader at heart. I always have been. I am amused by the same nonsense they're amused by. And they outgrow me. And then it's time for a new batch.
There you go. I have to tell you, I hope you'll do this. A second grade teacher, did something amazing for me when my daughter was in second grade and she started becoming an independent reader. I was bummed out because she's reading on her own. And I went into class one day, and Mrs. Kelly, who was bigger than both of us together, big, strong teacher, she came up to me. She said, you got to keep reading to her at home. And I'm like, really? Awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely. That is one of the things I promote, especially come second grade. There is a push, usually pretty intrinsically from the students of, I want those chapter books. I want those fatter books. I'm independent. We read at a minimum, one picture book a day in the classroom, like non-negotiable, and usually several more. But that was a thing I always recommended to families at parent-teacher conferences and like meet your teacher night of, oh no, keep reading with them. Like that is You can move to longer things. You can keep them in picture books. That we just want them growing their love of reading. Mm-hmm. And I think a great job that the grown-ups can do is helping expose the students to a variety of genres. And that's often easier to do through a read aloud, because it might not be what a child would self-select independently, but showing nonfiction of all different topics, getting into biographies, fantasy books, realistic fiction, just letting them see the vast world of children's literature. And then the really hard part for the grown-ups is then take a step back and let your child lead with what are they into, and let them pursue that and follow their lead. Mm-hmm. Still read with them, still celebrate, even if it's different than your own personal interests.
Right. Yeah. Yes, because we're here to serve them and help them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Tell me that one thing that I've learned through this podcast, and it really kind of surprised me because I'm like, how did I not know this beforehand? But it's the idea that kids learn to read from kindergarten through second grade, and then they read to learn at third grade. How can we help parents kind of get that message so that they're making sure that their kids are reading on grade level, or at least feeling comfortable? Because we're seeing the test results, and huge numbers of kids aren't reading on grade level.
Yeah, that is a tricky one. I think if I knew the answer to that specifically, you'd be very successful. I think it starts really young. Mm-hmm. And I say that understanding the privilege and entitlement I have within that, of having a print-rich home, having that exposure to books, and around having a grown-up or a trusted adult in their life that can be reading to them from a really young age. And, unfortunately, that is privilege, right? That for some families, that is not a priority because of circumstances of life. Mm-hmm. It is one of those places where, especially just coming back from ALA, brings me to my librarians and the amazing services that they do for communities. But really just helping books get into the hands and to the homes of children at an early age, modeling themselves that importance of reading, right? So often our kids copy what we do, for better or worse. And often the things we don't love them seeing, those are the first things they'll copy, and the great things we want them to do are the last thing that they emulate from us. But just showing that interest and having them available. Screens are screens, and they're so ever present at the moment and so competing for attention that I think maybe one of the biggest changes has been, that pull of the grown-ups' attention. Mm-hmm. I know what my phone does to me, which I'm not proud of most of the time, of, wait, how much time has gone by? And
what's the algorithm feeding me?
Right, exactly. And think about all that I could have accomplished in that time. And then you bring that into the parenting lens of, if I as a parent am so being distracted by my phone, well, my kids are seeing that. They're not seeing me reading a book. They're not seeing me engaging in conversation, spending time with friends. So we inadvertently are being some pretty terrible role models a lot of the time lately. And I think more and more we're becoming mindful of it and trying to make those changes. But there's a lot going against us right now, and a lot of bad habits that have been formed, myself included.
Well, yes, absolutely. Well, we can all work on it, and we can all support each other, and definitely keep reading with your kids is so very important. Andrew, let's tell everybody where they can go to find out more about In This Classroom and find out more about you.
Absolutely. So going to the Red Comet Press website is a great place to start. They're my publisher for this book. or to my website. We can find information about the book, purchasing links if they're interested. I also want to make sure before we're done to shout out Arthur Lynn, who is the illustrator of the book and just did the most magnificent job bringing the heart of my story to life with these colorful, vibrant characters that any student from pre-K to 5th grade can relate to and see themselves in their actions. So I just feel super fortunate to have been paired with him and what he did. And I'd be very remiss if I didn't shout him out in this.
Awesome. We love it.
Yeah. And anyone else looking for more information, I'm on Instagram at Andrew C. Hackett, which is where I post a lot about the book. And as we approach back to school, probably some giveaways coming up and more information about the behind the scenes of how the book came to be.
Oh, great. We've had a great time speaking to the author of In This Classroom. Is book number 4 on Andrew's way to becoming an author of 454 books? Our guest has been Andrew Hackett. Hey, Andrew, great to see you. Thanks for being on.
You too. Thank you so much.
Hey, if you are the author of a fantastic children's book, you want to listen to this. Here at Reading with Your Kids, we know you worked hard to write your book. You spent months, maybe years, bringing your story to life. Your book deserves more than a quick social media post. It deserves to be celebrated. Imagine being able to say more than 200,000 people heard Reading with Your Kids announce that my book has been named a certified great read across the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network. That's the kind of attention we want to help great books receive. When your book is named a Reading with Your Kids certified great read, that recognition isn't the end of the process. That's when we get to work. We help celebrate and promote your books with reviews on major book discovery and retail platforms, promotion on the Reading with Your Kids podcast and across our social media channels, a custom announcement video, original music, promotional graphics, and fantastic creative content you can use to promote your book again and again. Because we don't just want to tell people that your book is great. We want to give you the tools and the content to help you keep telling that story for years to come. You created something special. Let us help you celebrate it. Visit Reading with Your Kids and click the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page to learn more about the Certified Great Read program. Your book deserves attention, and when it's named a Certified Great Read, that's when we get to work. Joining us from the beautiful Garden State of New Jersey, our guests are here to celebrate their new picture book, Lucky and Norman Saying Goodbye Is Bittersweet. Please first welcome our guest, New York Times best-selling author, Susan Cain. Susan, how are you?
I'm doing great. It's so great to be here with you.
Thank you very much. Great to see you. And joining us from one room down the hall is her son and co-author, Eli. Hey, Eli, what's going on?
Not much. How are you doing?
Doing great. I'm really looking forward to learning more about this book. So why don't we start with you, Eli? Tell us who are Lucky and Norman?
Okay, so Lucky and Norman are 2 donkeys that my brother and I became very close with on a trip to Spain. So we met these donkeys. They were far away from the gate, and we were kind of hoisted up at this gate waiting to see them. We really wanted to get to know them and become friends with them. My brother and I were about 7 and 9 years old, but they didn't want to see us, and that's what the story is about.
What's wrong with those donkeys, Susan? I mean, Eli seems like a great guy.
He is, and the book tells the story of how, so Eli and his older brother Sam, they spent all this time kind of courting the donkeys and getting the donkeys to finally become their best friends. And so they had this kind of real courtship and romance with the donkeys through the course of the summer vacation. And then at the end of the vacation, it came time to say goodbye. And that's when things got really hard for the boys. And in some ways it's funny because about 3/4 of the book just talks about how great the friendship was with these donkeys. But the real crux of the book is the moment where they had to say goodbye at the end and felt they would never see Lucky and Norman again, and learning to be okay with that. And that's really the message we wanted kids to take away.
Yeah. First, I'm just curious, Eli. Tell me if I'm doing this, asking you to reveal a spoiler. Did you guys ever get to see Lucky and Norman again?
Unfortunately, we did not. No,
Okay.
It was a lifelong dream of mine.
Well, you bring up something that's kind of hard to, and especially hard to talk to kids about. But when you think about it, all the loving relationships we have, they're going to end in sadness at some point, whether it's because people break up or someone passes or we move away. And for a lot of kids, that can be devastating. I'm wondering, Eli, if you remember when you were either 7 or 9, was that feeling that pain of saying goodbye, did it kind of make you think, oh, I don't want to do this again. I don't want to love anything again. I don't want to get hurt like this again.
Well, it definitely made me scared of trips. That's for sure. I would say
I don't think I knew that, by the way, until just now.
Yeah. I mean, I would say one of the things is that they do feel, when you have to say goodbye to something you love, it does feel horrible in the end, but I wouldn't call that the end. I think that's, the literal end of the physical relationship when you look at them eye to eye. But, right now, I still have a more emotional relationship with them, and in no way is that a sad or longing relationship. It's more of a happy memory that I can, look back on. So I wouldn't say that, sadness is always going to be the end of loving relationships, because even once the physical aspect is gone, you have the memory of what it was. Yeah.
So, Susan, I have to say, Eli, I don't know how old Eli is right now, but he's speaking with the wisdom of somebody far older than he is. Eli, how did you kind of come to this realization?
So my mom actually wrote a book about this, and I helped write one as well. But we were actually talking in the car last night, my mom and myself, about longing and why it, is an important aspect of life. And why, sometimes when you're a kid, especially a young kid, it doesn't really come naturally. You think that all of the relationships that you have, whether it be mother, father, brother, sister, they kind of seem so eternal and concrete. So when a loving relationship leaves, it's really emotional because it's never happened to you before. So I think that's why this book became a book. That's why this was such an important part of my brother and my childhoods.
Yeah. Susan, who pushed to get this book written? Was it something like you were like, hey, kids, come on, we're going to do a family project here? Or was it the kids going, Mom, we really have to share this story?
That's a really good question. And I don't remember exactly, but I will say my husband, Ken, who's not with us right now, he's with us, he's just not on this podcast. He's like an incredible, I don't know how to explain it. He's an incredible producer, cheerleader, maker of things happen person. And I think he thought it was really important that we tell this story. And then also Eli's Grandma Bobby, was a huge force behind the book. And really spent so much time with Sam and Eli, like all of them just writing together. And it was a real collaboration. I don't remember exactly who was the initial catalyst for it, but it was a whole family to do.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Eli, was it intimidating or daunting trying to write a book with your New York Times best-selling mom?
Not really. I wouldn't call it an intimidating experience. It was a fun experience. I guess the core memory that I have from it is sitting on the leg of the bed with my grandma on her computer from like whatever the first computer ever made was. This is an old computer in my grandma's house. We were trying to figure out how to type on it. But I mean, that was a very lovely experience. I don't think there was anything intimidating about it. Right. There's more connection.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad your grandma wasn't intimidated by the computer. My son and my mom, when my son was a whiz on the computers when he was a kid, and which was also bad at times, but he my mother, we got her a computer and she was very excited and she had trouble starting it up one day. And my then 5-year-old son went over and said, "Oh, Nana, I got this. No problem." Turn it on. My grandmother said, "All right, that's done. Get this thing out of my house. If my 5-year-old knows how to do it better than me, I don't want to do it."
Well, Grandma Bobby is always asking Sam and Eli for like tutoring lessons and this or that aspect of running the computer. But she herself, she's been writing children's books for many years. So she's pretty practiced, maybe not at the computing aspects, but she's pretty practiced at the writing aspects.
Yeah. Susan, how different was it for you writing a children's book as opposed to a book for adults?
The process was incredibly different. The story was not, because I had actually told this story. I wrote a book for adults called Bittersweet, How Sorrow and Longing Make Us Whole. And I actually first told this story in that book, because I'm pretty sure, if I'm remembering the details right, that this whole thing happened while I was writing that book. So I was like taking notes as it was happening. So I was like deeply familiar with the story already, but the actual process of bringing the story to life for children was completely different. The language, and then also the illustrations. I don't know if you noticed like how incredibly beautiful and moving and like adorable the visual representation of the donkeys is in this book. And that's because of this amazing illustrator we found. Her name is Stella Lim, and she just did such an incredible job. So like that whole process was completely new to me, and I loved it.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess going from writing everything and describing everything to having to remember to leave room for the illustrator to tell part of the story was a challenge.
Yeah.
Have you been... Oh, go ahead, Susan.
What was I going to say? I mean, I guess just... Eli kind of just alluded to this a minute ago, but it is really interesting how for kids, when they first say goodbye to a beloved person or experience, that's happening to them for the first time. So in the moment, like the kids can be experiencing that as a catastrophe because they don't know that they're going to feel better because it's the first time that they've had that experience. So being able to like teach them what Eli just said, that you come to actually not necessarily have sadness when you recall the memory, but actually have happiness. And what I remember also from that moment on that vacation is that when we said to the kids things like, don't worry, maybe we'll see Lucky and Norman again, or maybe we'll come back here. That didn't make them feel better. What made them feel better was when we said, yeah, it's a painful feeling saying goodbye. And you will, we promise you, you're going to feel better, but acknowledging the difficulty of the experience is, I think, what children and what all of us need, because a lot of the suffering that we undergo during those experiences is because we're feeling like this wasn't supposed to happen, like this pain wasn't supposed to happen. And if instead you say, no, the pain of goodbye is part of life, and you will soon feel differently about it, I think that's what children and what all of us need to hear.
Yeah. Eli, how difficult was that plane flight back from Spain?
It was a difficult plane. I mean, the hardest part was actually illustrated in the book. I think there are a few pages about it. But it was when we were in our bedroom on it must have been the last night of the vacation, and our parents came in and talked to us. And I don't remember everything about it, but one emotion that I do remember is exactly that. Every part of the pain feels eternal. It's like, if I'm not going to have this now, and if I'm this upset about leaving it, then of course I'm going to be equally as upset 50 years from now when I also don't have it. Mm-hmm. So I would say, I don't know about the plane ride, but that night in particular, that's an emotion that I certainly remember feeling.
Yeah. But it helped you to have your parents come in and talk to you about it. Am I hearing you right?
It did. Yeah. It helped, but it was still a hard experience.
Sure. Yeah. Well, that's why I launched in part Reading with Your Kids, is because I am guessing that, if your mom's writing, best-selling books, that she was probably reading to you as well when you were growing up and starting those conversations and talking about books and talking about different situations. I launched the podcast because I know that the relationship I have with my now adult kids was built on a foundation of reading together, which turned into cooking together and throwing the ball around together and watching dopey TV shows together and having conversations about everything. And there's lots of benefits when we read with our kids. They hear more words, they start reading, they make more money when they grow up. But I think the greatest thing that kids get and adults get as the relationship and the bond that grows between parents. And it gives us the ability when your parents sit down and go, oh, Eli and Sam, this is going to be tough. Let's go talk to them about it. Did you what was the clues that this was going to be, that you needed to step in and have this conversation with your boys, Susan?
Oh, I mean, you didn't have to be very, a subtle appreciator of human behavior to pick up the cues. I mean, they were crying. It was at bedtime that they realized that the coming goodbye, that the goodbye was coming with the donkeys, and so they were crying themselves to sleep, and we were trying to make them feel better.
Yeah.
Again, by letting them know that the pain was natural and that it wouldn't last forever.
Yeah.
And as Eli says, I don't know if they fully believed in the moment, us telling them that the pain won't last forever, because as he says, when you're a child, you haven't been through that experience before. So how do you know that it's not going to last forever? Right. But I think something gets through.
Yeah. I remember Eli, when my son was in high school, I think junior, senior high school, he had his first real girlfriend. And it was pretty intense. In fact, I got a $85 bill because you were texting. It's back when texts, you had to pay for them. And I'm looking and it's like, hey, what's up? Not much. I'm like, I'm paying $85 for this. But I just sat down with them, because it was pretty intense. And I said, hey, look, if something happens, come and talk to me because it's going to hurt. And, a couple months later, he goes, hey, Pop, remember you told me to talk to you? And I'm glad we did that because it was, it was good that he was able to come to me and we could talk it out. Yeah. So Eli, now that this book is out there in the world, are you planning on being a picture book author in the future?
It could certainly be one of the things that I end up doing. I'm not sure. I do eventually. I've told my parents this. I do want to write at least one book when I'm older.
He's an incredible writer, and so during ninth grade. How many essays did you write, Eli?
In total, well, by now the series is at 45, but in freshman year alone, it was at 30, 32.
So these are 32 essays about foreign policy that he wrote for the heck of it because he loves foreign policy.
Wow.
Yeah. So some of them he's starting to publish on his Substack, and others more to come. But it wasn't like these were essays for school. These were just he felt like writing essays.
Good for you. Good for you, my friend. I think there's lots of opportunities, and writing is a phenomenal skill to have. It helps you in so many different ways. What are the kind of things, because I know people are hearing you and hearing your wisdom, and I'm sure they're curious as to what other things that you're looking to do in the future.
Well, I'd say to answer that question, you could just look at both of my parents and the books that they've both written. So my dad wrote one about, geopolitical situations in the mid and early 90s. And my mom wrote two books, kind of about more psychology. And I'd say I have two main passions that drive the things that I do. And it is both of those ideas. I'm really interested in the study of the mind. Not, the nitty gritty, I don't like studying parts of the mind, but, pattern recognition, studying humans, human behavior, I find really interesting, moral discussions. And then I also find, geopolitics incredibly interesting, because I think that's kind of the most important aspects of the minds being played out in a real situation that people live through.
Yeah. I know, Susan, people are sitting back going, yo, Mom, how did this kid happen? Tell me what I need to do to help my kid grow into the thoughtful young man that you have.
He was born that way, I will say. It's funny. He's talking about his fascination with psychology and then with applying that to world situations. And I've said to him, I remember from the time you were little that you would come up with these observations about human behavior, the other kids in the preschool or something in the family or whatever. And it always blew me away. So I couldn't have predicted that he would be like a geopolitical expert, but I definitely could have predicted that he would be a very wise and astute and fascinated wise person who would know about human nature. That was very clear from a very young age.
Tell me, Susan, I know that in addition to being the author of Bittersweet, you're also the author of a book called Quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And you're the host of the Quiet Life community. And did I get that right?
Yes, that's right. On Substack.
Do you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So Quiet is the first book that I ever wrote. And it's called Quiet, The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking. And it's about the often underrated powers of being a more quiet and cerebral, thoughtful type of person, and how we live in a culture that tends to have what I call a bias for the extrovert ideal. And that extroversion is also a great way of being, but so is introversion. And many introverts are told that there's something wrong with their way of being, when instead they should be encouraged to understand what a power they're sitting on. It's just a different kind of power. Mm-hmm. So that was the first book I wrote. And the Substack, the Quiet Life Substack, which is a community on Substack where I write, usually it's about 2 letters per week to our members, and we have we write to each other in comments, and we get together on Zoom for candlelight chats with guests and so on. And that's a community of people who are attracted to quiet and depth and beauty. It's for people who seek all those things and want to live in accordance with those ideals.
Well, when my wife hears this interview, she's going to tell me to go get that book and learn how to be quiet.
Well, it's funny because I have a chapter in the book that is all about romantic relationships and how often introverts and extroverts are attracted to each other and often marry each other. And I write in that chapter about some of the conflicts that come up in those relationships and how to manage them, but also why it is that introverts and extroverts are so often attracted to each other, and not just romantically, but as friends and as colleagues and business partners. We get along really well.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. And if folks want to know more about you, Susan, where should they go?
They should go to the Substack, The Quiet Life. So it's thequietlife.net.
Okay. Eli, you mentioned you have a Substack. Let's see if we can get you some followers. What's your Substack?
Pretty new one. It's called The World of Geopolitics.
The World of Geopolitics. And, of course, Lucky and Norman, Saying Goodbye Is Bittersweet is available wherever books are available?
Yes, it is. It is. And, you know what? I think I have a blurry back. Yes, I wanted to hold it up because it's just so adorable. Yeah. So I wanted people to get to see it.
Very, very cute. Eli, have you had a chance to do a reading or a classroom visit yet?
Yeah, my brother and I actually went to our 2nd grade classroom with the teacher that we both had, and we read to their students, which was amazing. It was actually a really fun experience.
Awesome. Well, this summer, I'd suggest go out, get to the bookstores, get to the libraries, do lots of readings, because it's a lot of fun.
We will do that. We will certainly do that.
We've had a great time speaking to the authors of Lucky and Norman, Saying Goodbye Is Bittersweet. Our guests have been Susan Cain and Eli Cain. My friends, thanks so much for being on Reading with Your Kids.
Thank you so much for having us, Jed.
Yeah, thank you.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids. Will join us for the next exciting episode of the show. If this episode made you smile or gave you something to think about, please consider sharing a link to the show with someone you love. Leave a 5-star review and, of course, subscribe to the show wherever you find your favorite shows. Hey, if you are the author of a fantastic children's book, please do visit readingwithyourkids.com. Click the Author's Click Here button up at the top of the page to find out how we can help you celebrate your fantastic book. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful, starting with our guest, Andrew Hackett. Please be sure to check out In This Classroom. Also want to thank Susan and Eli Cain. Please be sure to check out Lucky and Norman saying Goodbye Is Bittersweet. I want to thank my team, Ella Badier, Daylene Rose Adrina Lopez, Chris Doherty. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support and love she gives me. Most of all, we want to thank you. Thank you so much for doing what you can to make sure that your kid has the best chance to be happy and successful in life. And you do that along with making the world a better place every time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.